Charlie Kirk is awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, Trump initiates a historic peace deal in the Middle East, and people fill their yards with the most morbid and criminally tacky decor ever because, well, it's October. All that and more on the Kylee Cast. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kylee Cast. I'm Kylee Griswold, managing editor at the Federalist. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're just listening to the show, be sure to go check out the full video version on my personal YouTube channel or the Federalist's channel on Rumble. And then, of course, like and subscribe there too. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at radio@thefederalist.com. I would love to hear from you. Earlier this week, we watched a beautiful ceremony on what would have been Charlie Kirk's 32nd birthday. President Trump honored Charlie, a true martyr, with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian award in America and which is so fitting for someone who dedicated his entire life to advocating for truth and freedom in an age increasingly hostile to both. Here were some of the highlights.
Today we're here to honor and remember a fearless warrior for liberty, beloved leader who galvanized the next generation like nobody I've ever seen before, and an American patriot of the deepest conviction, the finest quality and the highest caliber, the late, great Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was one of a kind. He was unstoppable, and he really was. Boy, when he had an idea in his head, he would call me, "Sir, please, you haven't done it yet." I said, "Charlie, relax. Just relax." He didn't relax. He'd call me the next day again. It got it done. But he was like indomitable and always will be. He's really irreplaceable. Nobody can replace him. But Charlie never missed an opportunity to remind us of the Judeo-Christian principles of our nation's founding or to share his deep Christian faith. In his final moments, Charlie testified to the greatness of America and to the glory of our Savior, with whom he now rests in heaven.
But probably the best part of the ceremony was Erika Kirk's speech. Not only because she continued to rib Trump about loving our enemies.
Surprisingly enough, he did pray for his enemies, which is very hard, but he did. He did. He did.
But Erika was the best part of the ceremony because she so beautifully articulated what true freedom really means.
The blessings of liberty are not man's invention. They are God's endowment. Charlie lived for those blessings, not as abstract words, but as sacred promises.
You know, too many Americans don't view liberty this way. Just a couple of months ago, you'll remember that Democrat Senator Tim Kaine ridiculously claimed that it was extremely troubling for people to think that our rights, our freedoms, come from God rather than the government. Of course, Tim Kaine has this completely backwards. It's right there in our nation's founding documents that our inalienable rights of life and freedom are given to us by our Creator. Our government is there to help safeguard those pre-existing rights, not to grant them. But I think far too often Americans tend to confuse what freedom even means, what freedom is actually for, as if freedom itself is the end goal. Live free or die. We want freedom so we can do whatever we want. No responsibility, no accountability, no duty, nobody telling us what to do. And even Republicans, and of course libertarians, often view freedom as just freedom from big government. I think when many people today talk about liberty, what they really want is license, which has very clearly contributed to so many of our social ills. But despite what Kamala Harris might say, freedom is not about being unburdened from duty. It's freedom to duty, to responsibility, to tradition and truth and honor. And often we see this misunderstanding of freedom break down along party lines. When Democrats talk about freedom, they typically do so in reference to things like reproductive freedom or a woman's so-called freedom to choose. Well, freedom to choose what? What they really mean is license to kill what's inconvenient, to abort, license to nuke the consequences of their own actions. It's freedom from responsibility. Or they talk about freedom and liberty for same-sex couples to marry. Well, to what end? not the continuation of the human race, not the natural right of children to have a mother and a father, not the responsibility to be fruitful and multiply. What they really mean is they want license from sexual norms. Meanwhile, when true conservatives talk about freedom, they talk about things like freedom to keep and bear arms. To what end? Well, for self-defense, to defend against tyranny. There's a duty associated with that, a responsibility. Or we talk about things like freedom of speech. Well, why? Because, as Charlie Kirk said, when people stop talking, bad things happen. We have a responsibility to speak the truth. Or we talk about freedom of religion. Why? Because we are duty bound to our Creator and we want to worship Him freely as He commands. These are all freedoms to something, not from it. Charlie understood that. Which brings me to an even more precious part of Erika's speech, where she said this: "To live free is the greatest gift. To die free is the greatest victory." Charlie didn't just die free because he died as a citizen of the United States of America, the freest country on earth. Charlie died free because he died a citizen of heaven. His freedom didn't just come from the courage and sacrifices of the founders or the bravery of those who gave their lives in service to this country. It came from the sacrifice of his Savior, Jesus Christ, who took Charlie's sin upon himself on the cross and, in his resurrection, secured Charlie's eternal freedom. And Charlie Kirk would be the first one to tell you this. It's such a privilege to watch Erika Kirk talk about this eternal freedom, but especially when our president is watching and listening. Trump is 79, and no matter how sharp he is up there in years. And it seems increasingly clear that he's been thinking about his own mortality and the reality of the afterlife. Maybe it's because of Charlie, maybe it's because of his own brushes with death, I don't know. But either way, Trump is thinking about dying. He's thinking about heaven, even if he's completely wrong about what it would take to get him there. And spoiler, President Trump, it's not a historic peace deal in the Middle East. It is just the gospel, plain and simple. And thanks to Erika Kirk and the other Christians in Trump's orbit, he's hearing about the gospel regularly. So rather than being frustrated that Trump doesn't understand it yet, that he still thinks it's about the good deeds he does, pray for the president, not just that he continues to fight for the great gift of living free in America, but that he would surrender to the free gift of grace that would empower him to one day actually die free, just like Charlie. You know, it's really hard to believe that it's been over a month since Charlie died. In many ways, it feels like we heard about it yesterday, and in other ways, it feels like it's been years. And either way, it still doesn't feel real. Watching the Medal of Freedom ceremony, I kept seeing the word posthumously. And it just made me incredibly sad. And it rekindled so much of the anger I feel that's just kind of been simmering for the past month. But the event was also a reminder of what's at stake, of what's worth fighting for. We were reminded this week that Charlie's battle is over, but ours continues every day. And so we fight. All right, next up, Trump truly seems to be the peace president. And this week we have phase one of a historic peace deal between Israel and Gaza. Hostages have been returned home. Truly so many great things happening in the Middle East. Here to join me to discuss is David Harsanyi, my former on-again, off-again colleague for a while. Now he's a senior writer at the Washington Examiner, co-host of You're Wrong here on the Federalist. David, so great to see you.
It's great to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. It's been a hot minute, and it's great to talk to you. So, David, you are way more of an expert on all things related to the Middle East and Israel-Gaza relations, all the history there. So can you just give, for people maybe who aren't as tuned in to what this peace plan entails, what the war between Israel and Hamas has looked like for the past couple of years, just kind of give them a broad 30,000-foot view of the peace plan and what phase we're in, what it's looking like.
Well, we're in phase one, where Hamas returns the living hostages, 20 of them, which they have been returned, and then returns a bunch of, unfortunately, dead bodies. And they have not done that. So, or they're in the process. We don't know exactly where it is. The long view is that October 7th happened, everyone knows, but the war is really not the Gaza-Israeli war, as a lot of people think. It's a war against Iran and Israel. There are about, a forefront proxy fight with Lebanon, initially in Syria, with Iran, with the Houthis, with Hamas. And Israel, I think, has been incredibly successful in that war. I mean, Hezbollah fell, the Assad regime is gone. The Iranians were embarrassed with American help. Their nuclear program has been set back many years, maybe decades. And Hamas has been obliterated. But the thing with Hamas was, they hide within civilian populations. So obviously that makes it very difficult. And Israel had to try to get back the hostages. There was immense pressure within Israel to get back those people for obvious reasons. We'd want to do the same. And so I think what happened was, after Israel, I'm sure people know, bombed Qatar to try to kill Hamas's leaders, I think it was unsuccessful. But I think Qatar, everyone says Qatar, I say Qatar. I go old fashioned on that one. Qatar simply realized.
You sounded just like Trump when you said that, David. I hope you know that. Everyone says this. I say this.
China. So I think that Qatar realized there could be a really deep price to pay for continuing to prop up Hamas, and they've been their patron for a long time. So Hamas was surrounded in Gaza City. I don't think they had much of a choice. Israel was about to annihilate them. I mean, it's very difficult to kill all of them because they hide in civilian populations. They're one of the only armies in the world who take off their uniforms when wars start and put them back on after. But it is an incredible achievement, I think, considering how Hamas uses hostages, that Trump was able to convince them to enter into the ceasefire deal. The number one point in his 20-point plan for Trump was that Gaza must de-radicalize. I'm pretty skeptical that's going to happen, but I do think he set the table for something amazing, in the sense that I'm not sure what's going to happen in Gaza, but Israel has hermetically sealed that place off. There's not going to be any more October 7th. There's not a civ-like border with Egypt where they can get missiles and all the things that start serious trouble for Israel and others. So, Gaza could turn into Somalia, right? But Gaza, if they wanted to, and they've had this chance before, the world wants to help them. They can turn into a prosperous place if they want to choose that. That's a different story to talk about. But anyway, so
yeah.
I think what people miss here, or might miss, is that when Trump went to Egypt to meet with all these countries, Pakistan was there, Indonesia, the largest, most populous Islamic, Muslim majority country in the world, Iraq, Turkey. He has essentially set the table for all these people to concede or accept a plan that says that Gaza has to de-radicalize before we even start talking about other states and stuff like that. So I think that's big. But also, October 7th, and Hamas admitted this, was started because they wanted to undermine the Abraham Accords, which Trump had brought forth in, during his first term. So I think that's going to get back on track. There are rumors that Indonesia might be part of it. Obviously, Saudi Arabia was going to be part of it. I think there's this misconception that Israel is at war with the Arabs. No, Israel has peace with every Sunni Arab country. Its war was with Iran. So these are big. I think these are big achievements for Donald Trump. There are so many clans and tribes and ethnicities and religious, denominations and all kinds of tensions in the Middle East. So you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
But I think there's a better chance. He set the table for a better chance for peace, I think, than has been the case there in a very, very long time, or perhaps ever.
And can you kind of speak to why exactly you think that is? I mean, because there's a lot of factors at play here, right? So, I'm hearing a lot of hope that this is truly historic, that this is actually going to be effective in ways that it hasn't been in the past. But then also, when we talk about the need for Gaza or Hamas to de-radicalize, it's like, okay, that's not exactly in their nature. That's not what you would expect absent serious interventions. And then even then not, we know polling on the number of people in Gaza who were supportive of Hamas. And so like, even with the primary leadership of Hamas obliterated, what reason is there to believe that this ceasefire will be different than the ceasefire that was in effect, the two that were attempted to be enacted since the October 7th attack, or even since the ceasefire that was in effect right when October 7th happened. Like, can you speak to some of the complicating factors here, but also why this is different, seems different? Is it just because of the cooperation of so many more in the Arab world, or what do you think it is?
I definitely think it's because of the cooperation
Mhm.
and the buy-in from the Islamic world, Turkey, Egypt, and all of that. It's also different because Hamas is no longer. So in 2005 or 6, Israel gave autonomy to the Gazans in the Gaza Strip. They pulled out all Jewish people from there, everyone else. They left them with advanced farming equipment, all of this stuff. They could have had a proto-state there to begin with, but instead they chose to bring in missiles, build tunnels, all of that stuff. But that's over. That can't happen again, probably. So I think that makes it a far more, it lays the groundwork for them to perhaps be peaceful, especially because of the buy-in of the Arab countries. They don't have Iran anymore. So Turkey and Qatar will be, I think, their patrons now, and they may push for a more peaceful resolution. At least that's the hope, and there seems to be some buy-in.
Okay, that makes sense. Can you explain a little bit about the withdrawal plan, what it looks like that, Israel's controlling a little over 50%, or not controlling, that the IDF is in a little over 50% right now of Gaza, but that they're going to progressively withdraw. What exactly does that look like? And can you just explain the strategy there? Why it's hopefully going to be effective, or do you
I
not
guess
think that's going to work?
I don't know that. I don't know. I mean, I think it's like a 3-phased kind of pullout.
Hmm.
Israel's going to create some kind of buffer zone. I think it's worth talking a little bit about this idea. A lot of people talk about occupied territories and
Hmm.
Israel's occupation and this and that. So Gaza, for people who don't know, so in 1948, the Israelis had a state. They had to fight for it. The Arabs could have had a state as well, Palestinians at the time, but they decided to start a war and they lost. But
Hmm.
Gaza from 1948 to 1967 was controlled by Egypt. It wasn't even occupied by Israel. No one ever spoke about Palestinian states then because it's just kind of a concoction. But anyway,
Hmm. Right.
Israel, when it won back that territory for military reasons in 1967, like 5 minutes after that war was over, they were trying to give it back. They have never wanted to be there.
Hmm.
It has been a big problem for them. They don't want to have soldiers, in there. They don't. It's different than Jerusalem, which they do want, which is contested. They do not want Gaza. They
Hmm.
can't have a state there if the state there is going to have missiles a few minutes away
Right.
from population centers, right? You're
Right.
going to create a terrorist state. No country would do that. So that's always been the problem there. They tried to give them the state, as I mentioned before, and they just simply couldn't even take care of their own people. Without the
Hmm.
Israelis, they don't have clean water. They don't have
Right.
electricity. They don't have anything. So I don't honestly know that the plan has, I don't know what the plan is to make Gazans self-sufficient. They have so much. The Palestinians have a lot of goodwill in the world. People are showering them with aid. They've been showering them with aid
Hmm.
forever. I don't know how this works if Hamas is in control. But Gaza is also complex in the way that if Hamas puts down their weapons, they might be massacred by the other
Right.
clans that hate them there. So
Right.
I don't honestly know what's going to happen. I don't think Israel wants to go back and, I mean, I saw today Donald Trump says if they don't disarm Hamas, someone's going to go in and disarm them. I mean, Israel's been trying to do that for years.
Hmm.
That's why I said before, for me, the most interesting and heartening part of this plan is the world buy-in
Hmm.
to give them a pathway towards peace. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but the war's over. The hostages are back. Israel's achieved, and from my view, this is good. Israel's achieved its war aims, and a lot of the Islamic world seems like they want to just move on from this.
Hmm.
I think those are all very good things, and I know that Donald Trump has kind of blown up or sort of battered the foreign policy consensus that was prevalent here in the United States for so many years. I mean, Jared Kushner has done more for peace in the Middle East than the Brookings Institution has done in its entire existence.
Yeah.
And so I think also on the flip side of that, you have this, because of the failures of Iraq and Afghanistan, I think there was an overcompensation the other way to say we should never get involved. We should never do anything. We're always going to be dragged into, World War III, where it's the next Vietnam, it's the next Iraq. Well, that didn't happen either. And people out there were scaremongering about that. What happened was America was a force for good and peace. And to do that, sometimes you have to win a war, or your allies have to win a war. And that's what happened. So I think all of that's positive. I don't think I answered your question at all.
No, you did a bit. It really is heartening to watch how surgical some of these strikes and plans have been, like the taking out of the Iranian nukes, because I think Rachel Bovard has written about this pretty well. Just the DC blob's propensity for war, or just this sort of they want kinetic action. And it's been so heartening because I think that's why people are so ready for that and so scared of that, because of the Bush era of governance. And it's been so cool to watch a president who uses the power that he has, goes in, helps organize a surgical strike, and then just gets right back out. It's a big change and very refreshing. I'm curious, I mean, aside from the fact that he was just a walking corpse, why did none of this get done under the Biden administration? I mean, was it just a complete lack of will? Was it actual disdain for Israel? Was it too much radicalism on the left, like too many warring factions even within the party, that there wasn't appetite for this, or that they didn't want to tick off their core constituencies? Like why did none of this get done? And then Trump is in office for 10 months, less than 10 months, and boom, we have a workable peace plan.
Well, I think the factors that you mentioned, it's all of the above. Obviously, there's a growing contingent on the left that just hates Israel. But going back to the Obama years, you had an administration that wanted to lift Iran and created this to create a kind of regional power that can be a buffer against Israel in a way, offset Israel's power in the Middle East. But Israel proved that it was far superior technologically, militarily. What it did to Hezbollah, what it did to Iran before even the bombing of the nuclear facilities, was incredibly impressive. I mean, I think it has one of the best armies in the world and best intelligence services, and that's what makes them partly a very good ally to us. I mean, I think there's an exceptionalism there and here, and I think that's also why Trump likes and has affection for, I think part of why he has affection for them. And I have to quickly just say, there is immense affection for Donald Trump in Israel. I don't think that any foreign leader has ever been as loved as Donald Trump is in Israel. In fact, I was telling Molly Hemingway this, I don't think there's maybe any Israeli politician that has ever been as beloved as Donald Trump is there. Now, obviously, they don't get the full Donald Trump everyday experience, but I think he had a moral clarity to support them in war and in peace. Anyway, from my perspective, that's excellent. So, yeah, he's beloved there. So
maybe the full Donald Trump experience would make them like him more, David. You don't know. You don't know.
Pretty sure, but maybe not. I mean, if the speech he gave there reminded me a little bit of JFK speaking in West Berlin in 1963, because it was this kind of rousing speech against that has a lot of moral clarity. He has a view of Islamists, but he's not an ideologue in the sense that he's also open to making peace. I mean, he opened the door for Iran to have peace, and there is really no geopolitical reason for the United States and Iran to be enemies. That's the truth. In fact, there's no geopolitical reason for Israel and Iran to be at war. Before the revolution in 1979, they were friendly. It's an Islamic problem. Iran is run by Islamists, and that's the biggest problem in the Middle East right now. Peace could be had. And I think he realizes that. And because he's not an ideologue, because he's not a politician, because he didn't come up through those channels, he sees this as deal making, not as some kind of like, but he also sees the morality and he has a moral compass on who's the wrong side of things, but he doesn't see it in the way that a lot of DC blob people see it. And I have to also say something about Donald Trump. This works against him sometimes. I think it works for him. I mean, there's a lot you can disagree with Donald Trump, but he's not the kind of guy who's going to take on policies to please someone. And he's not the kind of guy who takes on, like, he can be convinced. If you're the last guy in the room, you might convince him to do something, but he's not the type of guy who's going to be pressured. So while France and Britain and Canada were rewarding Hamas's barbarity by recognizing the Palestinian state, he could not care less about the international community, and what they were pressuring him to do. And I think in Israelis who are very much like him, rough around the edges a bit and very aggressive and very, open about their feelings on things in the sense, I think he admires that kind of thinking among them. At least this is what I think. I think, part of the reason why that relationship exists.
Yeah. It's just the art of the deal. Yeah, you can tell a lot about the way that he interacts with foreign nations by his UN speech, for instance, his recent UN speech, where he just torched everybody. So, the Knesset speech, you could just feel the energy in the room. It was super palpable, and that gets also to. I mean, I don't see a Nobel Prize in Trump's future, as the prize committee has made pretty clear. But I was interested to see that Netanyahu has nominated Trump for the Israel Award, which I don't know a whole lot about that award, but it seems to be one of the highest honors you can receive in Israel, and that Trump would be the first non-Israeli to receive the award. So if that tells you anything about how they feel about him over there, it's a good indicator. So, let's pivot to the media a little bit, David, because as the Israelis were cheering for Donald Trump in Hostage Square, it gave me such great joy to watch the life drain from Wolf Blitzer's face as he had to talk about how many MAGA hats he saw because the Israelis were cheering and were so excited about Donald Trump. So the media coverage has been a mix of horrific, if you're Christiane Amanpour, to being hilarious in their admissions that Trump has done a great thing here. I'm curious what some of the worst media coverage you've noticed has been.
Well, in the Times and places like that, of course, I think it's the worst, but it's been so bad and dishonest. Like Wolf Blitzer or whoever's on CNN, obviously, they've always been, and Wolf Blitzer like started out as, I think he worked for AIPAC or something. I mean, he's a Zionist and all that, but for him to see Donald Trump do what others have promised to do forever, it must hurt, right? It must hurt. It hurts to see Hitler be celebrated in Israel, right?
Yes.
Amongst the Jewish state. So two things, actually. I actually want to take a step back and talk a little bit about like the ceasefire now protesters and all the people who marched and for free Palestine and all that. None of them were happy. Most of those politicians didn't even say anything when this happened. Then they gave some perfunctory statement because it was never about a ceasefire. It's about Israel losing. They want to see the destruction of Israel.
Right.
And the progressives who work at the New York Times and other, the Washington Post filled with them, a lot of them were former Qatari employees for Al Jazeera and so on. They are propagandists. The Qatari government itself is a huge funder of institutions, schools, J schools, media, all of that. So you're never going to get a real clear picture of what's gone on. And clearly Israel has lost support of the United States. I think that's because of the media propaganda, because of the massive amount of money that Shaykhams and Qataris have thrown at the United States, at certain people to create divisions. And because Israel didn't do a great job for itself, because it's hard to defend yourself when you're fighting a war, right? And civilians are going to die, and that's terrible, but it happens in every war. Again, I'm way off topic, but I think the media is part of that because they're not really journalists for the most part anymore. They're often just activists. Right. So they're part of this activist class that spread the lie, the complete hoax that there was a genocide going on. I don't know if you've seen the videos coming out of there. I mean, they are the most healthy and well-fed, victims of starvation in the world has ever seen. And people like, Jew baiters and Jew haters like Mehdi Hassan, who said that the Gaza thing was worse than the Holocaust, it's shameful, and there'll be no reckoning for it, and no one will have to pay. But for me, this is on board with like Russia collusion, with the Brett Kavanaugh hoax, with all the other hoaxes that have been perpetrated by the media, and they're part of it, and the activists are part of it, and the politicians, the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warrens, are part of it, and the what's his name, Zohar Mamdani is part of it. The only Hamas victory might be in Manhattan, so we'll see, in New York City coming up this election. So it's
True, by skinny arms, Mamdani. I mean, Christiana Manpour, she said that the Israeli hostages were treated better than the average Gazan. I mean, how crazy, how much crazy propaganda do you have to be intaking and spitting out to say something like that? That's just, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, she's always been terrible, but but think about this. Why are Gazans suffering? Because Gazans, not all of them, but many of them, participated in an attack on completely innocent civilians, raping, killing children, taking hostages, and a war broke out. And in that war, Hamas builds, I know people don't like to hear it, they build military installations under schools and buildings, and Israel has to figure out how to fight them. After 9/11, and if we scale up October 7th, it's 9/11 for Israel. We weren't like, oh, let's give the Taliban, let's give Al Qaeda a state, let's hear out both sides, let's go march for them. No, we messed some people up pretty badly, and that was what the American people wanted, and this is what was going to happen. And to treat Israel with some other standard that no other country would ever have, I think is unfair, is too light a word for it. It's immoral. And so the media was part of that from the beginning. A lot of lies.
Before I let you go, I have one logistical question that I'm just curious about. I mean, one problem prior to this peace deal in the Middle East was just that we were funding both sides of the conflict. I mean, that's self-explanatory. We were funding both sides of the conflict. And so what does that look like moving forward? I mean, of course, we're helping, the Gaza Strip rebuild infrastructure and sending in aid and whatnot. But like after the rebuilding, are we done funding that side? Or what does this look like going forward, and what should it look like? And how can we sustain a peace plan if we are funding both sides?
Well, we were funding both sides. We should only be funding one side, in my view, but we were funding the other side inadvertently. I mean, and not to say that Democrats, let's say, or even Republicans didn't know what was happening with that money, how Hamas was stealing aid and buying missile casings or whatever with it, and missiles themselves. So Donald Trump has said that he is not going to fund a radicalized Gaza. So then you'd be funding. My view is I wouldn't give them a penny, honestly, as an American. I don't want to give them a penny. They hate me. They're my enemy. I mean, personally, as a Jewish person, but as an American also. They killed 47 Americans that day. Let the sheiks who sit on oil and do nothing else but live off that luck, let them fund, and they're the ones always complaining about it. Let them fund and rebuild Gaza to look like Dubai or whatever. That's fine by me. But if we are going to fund, we have to make sure that money does not go through the United Nations, which is participated in the insurrection against Israel. They have perpetuated the suffering of the Palestinian people by keeping them in refugee camps for 70 years, waiting to go back to their homes, supposedly in Tel Aviv or whatever. It's never going to happen. I mean, everyone has to accept history and reality, or you can't move forward here. And the UN should not be part of it. I trust Donald Trump will not let the UN be part of it. I don't know who's going to be president next. I know Democrats will one day again take power. When that happens, I don't know what's going to happen. I think we should be funding our allies who help us, and with intelligence, with our standing in the world. I don't think we should be helping people who want us dead. Now, if the Palestinians change their attitudes about the world and are open to it and friendly, I mean, I think it's a good place to invest. I don't know if you've ever seen I'm sure you have, the coast of Israel and Tel Aviv and the beaches and how beautiful. Palestinians share the same exact coastline. It could be a vacation Mecca, or whatever, Mecca. But so if that's what they want to do, I'm sure plenty of Americans would want to invest their money into that sort of society. We help Israel with military means. Yeah, put Trump. I think they would. I mean, everyone mocked Trump, but I think they should be happy about that. Now, one last thing on Trump, he had spoken about that earlier, like a year ago, whenever, about Trump Hotel and all that stuff. He's his force of will. Like, he says something's going to happen. It doesn't exactly happen the way he says, but there's kind of a force of will there because he doesn't play by the conventions of how this stuff usually goes on. He circumvents stuff. It's like Jared Kushner during the first term circumvented the Palestinian issue to have the Abraham Accords happen. Like, that's never happened, in modern times. So it's like fresh thinking, I don't even know if it's fresh thinking. It's the only way he can think. And I think that's what happened here in a way. And yeah, we'll see how it goes, but it's definitely better than what was before. And the war's over, and that's great. Yeah, the hostages are home. I don't know if you watch those videos. I mean, I tear it up, and I almost never ever tear up. Yeah, and it's just 2 years, and I think that we should be boosting and helping and making friends with countries that share our worldview, our Western worldview, and trying to entice others to come along with that. And if they don't want to, we shouldn't be helping them. So.
Yeah, I agree. Now the question is, what happens with all of our from the river to the sea fellow Americans, and who, of course, are not in favor of this ceasefire deal because it was brokered by Trump after Hamas was wiped out and not before. But
I think that's a plank of the left now. I think it's going to be like an enduring plank of the left, like BLM, Free Palestine, whatever tranny stuff's going on, or whatever social culture quackery is next, popular. I think that's now embedded in there. So I don't think the Democratic Party in the future will be pro-Israel at all. I'm worried about the Republican Party too, but definitely not the left. So I think that's over for a lot of Jews are going to have to come to grips with that.
Yep.
American
in the
Jews,
universities and elsewhere. Yeah, of course. Well, David, thanks so much. I appreciate all of your entertaining of my questions and all of your insights. So it was great to see you, and I hope to have you back again soon. You too, anytime. Thanks for having me. You can follow David on Twitter, X as it's called now. You can find him at the Washington Examiner, and absolutely listen to You're Wrong on the Federalist Radio Hour and You're Wrong on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get it, every Wednesday with David Harsanyi and Molly Hemingway. I'll see you later, David. Bye. All right, folks, it's officially October, which means it's almost Reformation Day. Happy Reformation Day to all who celebrate, which also means Halloween is right around the corner, which also means so are your neighbors' disgusting and gory and non-child-friendly decorations, if you could even call them that. You all know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about fall mums on porches, or pumpkins, or corn stalks, or little black cats, or even bats, or spiders, or webs. I'm talking about larger-than-life skeletons with glowing eyes that terrify children. I'm talking about demon clowns. I'm talking about corpses hanging from trees. I'm talking about terrifying witches and murder and death and gore. These larger-than-life displays come out year after year after year. Here are just a few. As you can see, here is one of a house that looks like it's burning down. It looks like it's reported that there were over 10 calls to the fire department about this house. What a waste of resources, and what a way to terrify people. Here's some more. A killer clown that pops out when you walk by. How lovely. Here we have an absolutely macabre display. Disgusting. This is not fun. This is not cute. It's so selfish. None of these people are the only ones living in their neighborhoods. They live near families. They live near small children. They live near elderly folks. All people who would love to be able to walk out their front door, go for a pleasant stroll in the crisp autumn air, and not encounter your hellish decor. All this Halloween decor reminded me of an old piece from my colleague Joy Pullman at the Federalist. She wrote this. This is neither tasteful nor fun. It's ugly and selfish. Every person who uses public streets is not an adult who enjoys viewing things designed to provoke horror. Some people are old. Some people are very young. Some people have PTSD. Some people have easily sickened stomachs, and people like emergency workers see horrific things on the job and need a break after hours. Like other friends' kids, my 4-year-old has been having nightmares since Halloween season started and is unable to sleep alone or even go upstairs in the daytime due to fears of all the horrible things he's seen on our streets. Thanks, neighbors. People, especially parents, should not be forced to retreat into their own homes for 2 months just so that other people with a fetish for blood and gore and guts can decorate with abandon. There will be people who will pretend that this is hypocrisy, that we conservatives just want safe spaces. You better believe it. Of course we want safe spaces for children. There's a difference between infantilizing adults and infantilizing infants. So much of this is obviously a result of our increasingly depraved entertainment landscape. Just look at what is available on Netflix and YouTube and in the theaters on any given day. So much of it is bloody and gory and hellish, and it desensitizes us to violence and things that are demonic. But at least this entertainment happens behind closed doors. A little kid can't unwittingly wander into an R-rated movie at the theater and then be scandalized for life. Not so for the corpse with its entrails hanging out, strewn around your yard. I might not agree with it, but if you want to watch that in your own time, that's your prerogative. But it's obvious that we should have different standards for public life and private life. What you do in public doesn't just affect you. The hideous Halloween decor, the gory Halloween decor, I keep using the word decor. It's not even decor. It doesn't make things pretty. The Halloween accessories, the Halloween landscaping, the Halloween lawn ornaments. Joy is right. They are neither tasteful nor fun. They are ugly and selfish. This type of disregard for our fellow man is the type of thing that contributes to a low trust society, where you don't know your neighbors, you don't trust your neighbors, and self-government becomes really difficult. But we see this type of disregard all of the time. It's not just Halloween. People throwing their trash out the window, people yelling in public or saying things to other people's kids that they shouldn't even be saying to other adults, people refusing to return their shopping carts, people blasting their music without headphones on in public spaces, on public transportation, in quiet parks, you name it. I was walking through a wooded trail the other day and I met a man who was blasting videos on his phone in the middle of this serene woods where people are trying to walk and enjoy nature and watch wildlife. Rude. This is not loving your fellow man. But the Halloween stuff just takes it to another level where you are just traumatizing children for no reason. I was very happy when Donald Trump issued his executive order about making America beautiful again. And I think we should apply the same principles to our front yards. Let's make them beautiful. If I were to issue an executive order, maybe I would just title mine, Make Decor Cute Again. All of the time, but especially on Halloween. Why don't we just think about our fellow man before we do things in public? That's the end of my Halloween rant, and that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Kylee Cast. I will be right back here next week with more. Until then, just remember, the truth hurts, but it won't kill you.